Hello, my fellow YouTubers and health conscious people around the world. Welcome to my channel, Healthtainment channel. My name is Srinivas. I'm an IT professional and I have a high passion for health and nutrition. Today, I'm going to talk about protein metabolism. Previously, I created a podcast on fat and carbohydrates metabolism, and this is one of my favorite topics. Basically, how our body digests and synthesizes proteins, and then I'll talk a bit about the protein leverage hypothesis. This is a very interesting topic. Um, but before I go into the details, a word of disclaimer. The information I'll be sharing is strictly general information purpose only, and don't use this as a medical advice. And there is no patient-doctor relationship is shared as a result. The use of information strictly is at user's own risk, and this information doesn't substitute medical advice and diagnostics. Well, before I go into the topic, one thing I strongly believe in is our body is the best doctor and food is the best medicine. What I meant by that is, meaning we need to pay attention and be aware of how we feel after we eat a meal. Are we fatigued? Are we energetic? Are we sleepy? That way we can judge if the food is right for our body or not. That's how, we can say if the food that we ate is good for us or not. Because most of the doctors have no knowledge on the nutrition of food. They know how to give you medication for everything, but they will never recommend you to take nutrition to cure. Or they will ask you what kind of diet you're following or what kind of lifestyle you have, because they have been manipulated by years by food and pharma industries. um, but the medication that they give may or may not cure for sure. But it will have several side effects. For example, take statins, metformin, Tylenol, antibiotics. They all may fix the issue, but they will have a lot of other issues that if you notice over a period of time. So honest is on us to learn and educate ourselves to become smart about our own body. We only live in one body and we live in it day in and out. We are living we are living in an energy abundant world. What that means is where we have food everywhere. Now, paying attention to what we eat matters a lot because you have a lot of food varieties to choose from. Some are easy to pick, some are difficult, but the easy ones are always dangerous that you need to pay attention. Food industries will try to market and make everything appetizing for their benefits, but they don't care about our health nor our doctors. Well, what is the common to all of these, right? You see hair, muscles, hormones, enzymes, hemoglobin, antibody structures, lipoprotein, nails. Well, protein. They're all made up of protein. Our protein are a combination of minerals. So, for example, hair is made up of proteins. Nails is partly made up of proteins. Lipoprotein. This is an interesting topic. Lipoprotein play a crucial role in our lipid metabolism, fat metabolism, transporting these lipids from liver, intestines to other tissues, right, for nutrition. They need lipoproteins. And these lipoproteins are made up of proteins such as ApoB, ApoC, ApoE, ApoE. These are maybe for some, these may be cryptic, but just give you a quick summary. ApoB is a transporter on the on the lipid panel to take the nutrition to the cells, right? So we get energy. ApoE is it cleans up the nutrition cholesterol from all the tissue, remaining cholesterol in all tissues, and brings it back to the liver. That is mainly the function of ApoE. It is on HDL. ApoC is a marker that actually pushes the fatty acids into adipose tissue. But so that's all made up of proteins and muscles. Obviously, we all know muscles are made up of protein, bones are made up of protein and minerals, right? To some extent, calcium. Antibody structures, our immune system is made up of protein. Hormones, there are so many hormones. Our whole body, it works on hormones like insulin, glucagon, thyroid, you name it, testosterone, estrogen. These are all hormones made of proteins. Enzymes are the ones that actually breaks the food particles. It makes the chemical reaction work in our body, and that's very crucial for us. And they are made up of protein and hemoglobin. How can we forget this? Hemoglobin is the main transporter of nutrition in the blood to all our cells. So protein plays a crucial role. So let's talk about macronutrients. And as we know, macronutrients at the high level are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So proteins. So the key difference between these macronutrients are carbs and fats are energy, right? They provide energy for us. Especially fats also provide, other functions. For omega-3, whole 50% of our brain is made up of fat, omega-3 fat, right? So, and the fat is made in the cells, in the lipid membrane of the cells is made up of lipids, fats, right? Protein is a bit different. Proteins are the building blocks of life and vital for our body. While, as I mentioned, carbohydrates and fats are primarily used for energy production, its protein is a truly all-round nutrition. Our body uses protein to build muscles, repair tissues, produce hormones, enzymes, and strengthen the immune system. So let's talk about calorie content in each of these macronutrients. Like 1 gram of protein gives you 4 kilocalories. 1 gram of carb gives you 4 kilocalories of energy. 1 gram of fat gives you 9 kilocalories. See, the fat has a higher calorie content, so that's why you got to be careful when you eat a fatty meal. But at the same time, fat is very satiating. So is protein. Of all the three macronutrients, protein is the highest satiating macronutrient, I will say. Second is fat, and third is carbs. To be honest with you, carbohydrates are not essential, whereas protein and fat, there are essential proteins, essential amino acids, I should say. There are essential fats like omega-3, omega-6, omega-9, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated. And then we also need minerals and vitamins besides these macronutrients. I will talk more about minerals in a separate podcast. I love to talk about minerals. Minerals are the provides a hidden hunger, satisfies hidden hunger in our body. Um, I want to repeat one more time. Of all the macronutrients, protein provides most satiating thing in our body. The reason is our body is looking for certain amount of protein all the time. Until it meets that, you always will feel hungry. So I'll talk more about it in the later session. So what are proteins? Proteins are at the molecular level, they are amino acids. There are essential and there are non-essential amino acids. And they are made up of amino acids, as I mentioned. Only 20, there are 20 different amino acids are needed to form all proteins in the body, right? A combination of a couple of amino acids will create another set of proteins like that. A combination, it's all permutations and combination creates a different structure like hormones, enzymes, muscles, you name it. But out of these 20, 9 of them are produced, is not produced by body itself, but the remaining 11 are somehow the bodies will be able to make it. But these 9, our body doesn't make it. So henceforth, it is essential to consume these essential amino acids in our food. So as you can see, there is alanine, asparagine, aspartic. These are all different amino acids: tryptophan, tyrosine, histidine, lysine, isoleucine, leucine, valine, tyrosine, serine, glycine, citosine, omethane, asparagine, arginine, alanine, proline, glutamic acid, tyrosine. So these are all different amino acids that our body needs. And as I mentioned, 9 of them are essential. That means you have to consume enough food. If you don't consume, that's where your malnutrition will come into the picture. You won't be satisfied with what you eat. So it's always better to consume the essential amino acids, which I'll talk more about in a later session. So sources of protein, there are animal source protein, there's a plant source protein. And to be honest with you, animal source protein is the best for our body because our body and animals' bodies are pretty much in structure when it comes to the molecular level. I always recommend taking animal-based protein. It is not only satiating, it gives you all the nutrients that you need. But at the same time, and in the plant foods, soy food is exceptional. It has all the 9 essential amino acids. Besides lentils, nuts, and rice, a combination of that, you can get all these essential foods, but you have to combine and eat these foods. At the same time, you're not guaranteed that you're getting all the essential amino acids. Well, let's talk about functions of a protein. Um, Proteins not only provide the combination of amino acids determine the specific function of each protein. For example, from muscle growth to wound healing, proteins can be categorized according to their functions, such as there will be structural proteins, transport proteins, signaling proteins, storage protein, motor proteins, and enzymes. So let's talk about these. So enzymatic proteins. So for example, lactase. Lactase break down lactose into two simple sugar molecules like glucose and lactose, right? So this is an enzyme. Lactase is an enzyme that is made up of protein, very crucial for our body. Hormonal proteins. So we all know insulin, glucagon, human growth hormone, testosterone, estrogen. These are all, and various other hormones are all made up of proteins. Insulin regulates our blood sugar levels. Glucagon is part of cortisol and increases blood sugar as needed when you're stressed. Human growth hormone is released when you do intense exercise. It's really good. It introduces new cells in our body for human growth, right? Structural protein, these are like collagen, elastin, keratin. These are useful in our body to look, to create a flexibility in our skins, bones, and tissues. So all these are made up of proteins. Transport proteins are hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, as you all know, is part. These are the proteins in the blood, and they supply nutrition to all parts of body. Defense or immune system proteins. These are lectins, tissue repairs. All this done by the defense or immune proteins. Receptor, the cells has a lot of receptors. Like, for example, if you want to insulin receptor, which basically mediates the uptake of glucose into the cell, which is a critical function as your insulin rises, your uptake of energy goes into the cell, and this is all mediated by insulin receptors. Storage proteins such as ferritin, which stores iron in our body, and there are movement proteins. These are actin and myosin. These are so useful for our body. So let's take a look at protein chemical structure. At fundamentally, there are the carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. They all have carbons, hydrogens, and oxygen molecules. But the thing about protein is protein has a nitrogen molecule, which is amino groups, right, in the structure. That's why it is unique. Whereas fats and carbohydrates, they all have C6H12O6, that's the carbohydrates, and then fat has more carbons in it. That's why you get more energy. It can vary from short chain fatty acid, medium chain fatty acids, long chain fatty acids. They all have varied amount of carbons in it. Whereas amino acids has a central carbon atom which is attached to a hydrogen atom, as you can see at the bottom, and an amino group which is on the left side, and a carboxyl group COH on your right side. And the letter R indicates the presence of a side chain which distinguishes, each amino acids. Depending on which amino acids you're talking about, glycine or leucine, tyrosine, they all have a different structure of R, but basically they all have amino groups, carboxyl group, right? So it's a amount of quantity that makes a different, what that component will be in terms of amino acids. Yeah, now let's talk about protein metabolism. What is metabolism fundamentally? Metabolism is how your body works. It's in a simple term, it's a part of anabolism and catabolism. Your body consumes the energy, stores energy, and your body also retrieves that energy and catabolizes to build other structures. So that is fundamentally metabolism is. Now let's talk about protein metabolism. Protein metabolism involves breaking down dietary protein into amino acids, right? That is basically catabolism. So basically taking the, dietary protein and breaking it into small amino acids, that's a catabolism. And using those amino acids to build new proteins or for energy is anabolism. So as the body uptakes a protein and it has to break down into amino acids, which is a fundamental lower ionic form, that is catabolism. And then using those amino acids to rebuild the human structure or other hormones, non-protein hormones, and and to use for energy, that is basically a process of anabolism. Now, let's talk about as we eat proteins, chicken, eggs, or whatnot. Before I go into that, there is a fundamental difference again in here how the protein gets digested compared to carbohydrates and fats. Carbohydrates are digested partly in our mouth through amylase, salivary amylase, and remaining it gets digested in our small intestine. There are enzymes that actually breaks the carbohydrates. Fats, again, part of fats are digested, metabolized or digested in our mouth. And then you have lipid lipases in our small intestine, and the bile acid is used to break down the fatty acids into small free fatty acids. Whereas proteins are purely digested in our stomach, and the rest of the proteins are digested in duodenum and jejunum, right? Um, the reason being, protein has this structure and three-dimensional structure. It needs some kind of acidic form to break it down. So stomach has HCl, and when you uptake or intake a protein or chicken or egg or some kind of a protein, your body senses the stomach cells have some sensors. It triggers the hydrochloric acid, and also there's a chief cells that actually push pepsin. Storage form is pepsinogen, and then the free form is pepsin. Pepsin is released. Pepsin actually cleaves the protein molecules into small protein molecules, right? And also the use of hydrochloric acid is not only it acts as an antibacterial, antimicrobial, but it also triggers a release of pepsin. So while part of the protein is break down in the stomach, the remaining part of breaking down of protein happens in our small intestine, mostly jejunum. Um, Trypsin, chymotrypsin, and other enzymes. These are all enzymes. Again, these enzymes are made of protein. So these enzymes break these further proteins into free amino acids, and those amino acids that are ingested into the bloodstream and goes into our liver. So in the liver, what you get is the basic fundamental lowest unit of protein, which is amino acids. Now liver takes those amino acids and creates new protein, new amino acids, pushes into the bloodstream for supply to all the cells. Now, cells have DNA. So each cell has its own DNA in the mitochondria. So, right, it will use that DNA to make a copy to create a protein molecule that builds exactly the structure of whether muscle cells or thigh cells or whatnot. So while DNA provides a copy and your liver pushes these protein molecules, and each of the cells consumes this and creates its own structure. That's how protein is used. Not only body uses body not only builds these muscles, but it consumes that when you eat a protein intake. Not only it uses that, and then the body protein also sometimes it consumes the tissues if you are doing a fasting or some kind of long lasting fasting, and if you do intense exercise, body has tendency to break the muscles and use that for energy. But most of the time, dietary protein intake is taken inside, and then when there is enough protein content in your body, for example, a minimum of 25/16, it triggers mTOR. mTOR is a mechanism through which body will trigger protein synthesis. When I say protein synthesis, means it'll try to make new structures in our body, and then it also makes non-protein derivatives. So, all the hormones and enzymes, antibodies, they're all made up of protein. So our body uses these amino acids, these proteins that are built in different ways based on the functions of the body. Excess protein can let's talk about it. What happens if you eat excess protein? So body will consume the amount of protein that it needs, amino acids, and builds the structure of the body. The remaining excess protein, body can use that as a energy. Like, see, body is very intelligent, right? If That's why it is not necessary to eat, carbohydrates to get sugar. Body has ways to mechanisms to generate glucose through protein, that is called gluconeogenesis, right? And the body can also make excess protein to fat also, but that is the very least occurring method in our body. And the body can use, as I mentioned, these excess proteins to convert to energy, and then through that process generates ATP, carbon dioxide, and water. And water is released, carbon dioxide is something you breathe out, energy is something you realize. And what happens to amino groups? So these are all the proteins or amino acids have amino groups, right? That is toxic. In the liver, what it does, the liver does is it separates the amino acids, basically ammonia group, and creates a urea. And urea is what you excrete in your through your kidney into urinals. So that way body is intelligent to take care of toxicity of that is introduced through this ammonia. So this is another view of how protein is metabolized. Dietary protein, endogenous protein is the protein that your body, within your body, it is taking the protein out of it. So both are used to convert to protein synthesis. Protein synthesis is something the body builds to build a skeletal muscle, and for hair growth, hormones, enzymes, and antibodies. So this is anabolism fundamentally. Now, catabolism is where the body is taking these protein molecules, creating amino acids, um, and then using that to create other proteins. Now, so in the process, when there is an excess energy, excess proteins, it can convert to carbohydrates and lipids and releases carbon dioxide and water and energy. Amino acids is excreted as urea, as urine, right? So I see a lot of people have questions about, oh, if I eat a lot of protein, maybe I'm generating a lot of amino acids. Yes, you are, but the thing is, body has mechanisms to excrete anything excess. Body is intelligent enough to take care of it. Body will not let you die. Bottom line. All right, here is a summary macronutrient metabolism. Um, in the past, I talked about carbohydrates, fat, and proteins. So fundamentally, in the fed state, nutrients are stored, right? When you eat, if you eat a little bit extra carbohydrates, insulin grows high. As a result, insulin is a storage hormone. The energy is stored in the body. In the fasting state, they are oxidized for energy production. So when you're fasting, insulin goes down, and that allows the leverage the fats and glycogen to be used, right? So let's talk about in carbohydrates. Um, Glucose is the fundamental energy molecule that gets generated as you eat carbohydrates, and metabolic pathway in the glycolysis, it is stored as glycogen or fat. Glycogen in our liver, approximately 100 grams, and 400 grams in our muscles. Any excess, it is stored as fat through de novo lipogenesis. So that is the um, anabolic form of the glucose. Now, glucose gets synthesized into other components, and glucose gets oxidized to generate energy also, right? That is through Krebs cycle, acetyl-CoA, and through the Krebs cycle. There are two pathways, pyruvate, and the ultimate form is 36, generates 36 units of energy, and a part of that is carbohydrates and water are excreted. So fats, basically fats are triglycerides. It's stored as triglycerides in our body, fatty acids and glycerol molecule. Metabolic path is stored as triglycerides in our body. That is through the anabolic path, and it is oxidized to generate energy. And then excess fats can be used to generate ketones, right? And those then and those glycerol is used for to generate glucose in our body. That's why it is not necessary to eat carbohydrates, because body has many ways to generate carbohydrates or glucose in our body through fats and proteins. So what you're seeing is a classic way of how fats are used to generate glucose. Because why does our body need glucose? Body needs glucose only to for brain and red blood cells are the only organs in our body that needs continuous glucose energy. Otherwise every part of body can use ketones, and including brain also can use a big chunk of ketones. So henceforth the use of glucose when you are in fasting state is very less, because fats has a ways to body has a ways to use fats to generate glucose molecules. So is proteins through gluconeogenesis. Now, proteins gets converted to amino acids and in an anabolic fashion stored as glycogen or fat, and it's oxidized to generate energy. And its proteins are also used to create muscles and other protein functions that I just mentioned earlier. So, how much fundamentally? Let's talk about how much protein should we consume. Well, of all the macronutrients, protein is something you can actually take liberally. You don't need to weigh in and eat, because you can't eat more protein, right? And also, protein is so satiating, right? You can't out eat protein, period. But you can out eat carbs and fats to some extent. But fats are also, I would consider them to be in the same category as protein. You cannot out eat that much fat, but you can eat a lot of carbohydrates, which is usually dangerous. Daily recommended protein is 20 to 30% of your total calories. And for adults, protein range is zero point 0.5, 0.8 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight, or about zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. So these are all different, you know, sources of protein. Um, Now let's talk about protein leverage hypothesis. This is an interesting topic I encountered. I just want to share. Well, protein leverage hypothesis proposes that humans have a strong psychological drive to consume sufficient protein. What that means is our body is craving for a certain amount of protein all the time, right? Um, until it meets that, you will start becoming hungry for you. Basically hunger kicks in and you tend to eat uh, other macronutrients like carbohydrates and fats. As a result, you gain more energy, and that can lead to weight. So as I mentioned, your body has a certain requirements for daily protein requirements that for a 150-pound person, usually 100 to 120 grams of protein is needed. Let's say if this person eats less than that, so body is always craving for energy, always craving for hunger. And then without realizing, if you consume carbohydrates and fats instead of consuming protein, you will gain more energy and you feel hunger again. For example, let's say you take 60% carbohydrates and 20% fat and remaining is protein. Since your body protein requirement is not met, since you ate more carbohydrates, you feel more hunger, right? The reason being, as you eat more carbohydrates, insulin goes up. Insulin is the storage hormone. It stores all the energy. Now, all of a sudden, you feel hunger again. So it's a cyclic process. Now, let's take another example where you eat more fat. Let's say 50% fat, 20% carbohydrates, remaining protein, or 30% of carbohydrates, remaining protein. So in this scenario, you're eating more fat, but at the same time, you're relatively eating more carbohydrates. That is very dangerous combination. Eating protein, eating fat and carbohydrates is excess energy in a body. As I mentioned, carbohydrates and fats are energy. Protein is a kind of energy, but it is more than energy. It is more of a structural building, hormonal building um, um, component in our body. So in case of high protein, high fat, medium carbs, and low protein, again, you're in the same situation where if you're consuming more carbohydrates, more fat means you are going to be consuming energy, but you don't have any protein in it. Now let's take another example. High protein, let's say 40, 50% of the diet is protein, remaining 30%. Usually protein comes with fat. You tend to eat more fat as well along with protein, and then less carbs. This is the ideal condition. The reason being, protein is a high satiating macronutrient for our body. When you eat protein, your body satisfies. Where is the satisfaction coming from? Because the hunger is getting kicked in the stomach through some chemicals called ghrelin hormone. Ghrelin is the one that actually kicks in when you're hunger. So in case of protein, when you eat protein, there's a peptide YY hormone is released in the body that actually suppresses the ghrelin hormone. As a result, you don't feel hunger again. Similarly, for fat, when you eat fat, there is a chemical hormone that gets released. It's called leptin, and leptin again is suppresses ghrelin. As a result, you don't feel hunger. Well, when you eat carbohydrates, there is no hormone, satiety hormone that gets released. That's why we tend to eat more carbohydrates, and there is no ending, right? Let's take example like rice, cookies, pasta, pizza. You tend to eat more, and you're still not satisfied. Why? Because the body is craving for protein. Until you give that much protein, you will not, you'll continuously feel hunger again and again. So I have tried this method for the last 1 to 2 years now. I'm totally convinced this protein leverage hypothesis is so important for all of us that we need to eat enough protein per day and then consume rest of other nutrients as needed. Um, Actually, I'm going to talk more about minerals as well. Minerals is another interesting topic. I learned a lot about it. So in the next session, I'll cover more about minerals. For now, I hope you enjoyed this session. Please, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my Healthtainment channel, and we'll talk again later in the next session. Thank you all. Bye bye.